it would only take me about 5 minutes to drive to my grandma's house on Cedar Lane. She lived so close to me all the years I was growing up that I saw her all the time. And I remember her as being a very shy, soft-spoken woman. But unfortunately, all of that changed when I turned 16. She went from being very sweet and charming to being fearful and anxious and suspicious. And she just changed beyond recognition. This was the beginning of her 20-year journey with Alzheimer's disease. And in addition to that, I've also had 8 of my own family members live with one of the brain diseases that causes dementia. But I also help people who have been touched by this disease too. So I'll never forget this one particular visit with my grandmother. We sat down in her living room, and I just thought that we were going to have a nice, normal catch-up. And she started telling me about these birds that lived in her mattress. And they came out at night and pecked her face. And these rats, by the hundreds, were invading her home. And then she proceeded to tell me that those people were breaking into her home, stealing her jewelry, and she was convinced they were out to harm her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was heartbreaking to hear my grandmother tell me these stories, but I listened. And to tell you the truth, I really didn't know what to do. I was dumbfounded, but she was my grandma, so I desperately wanted to believe her. That is why I'm here today, because as Chris mentioned, I have been doing this professionally for 30 years. And one of the takeaways that I have realized in 30 plus years that I've been helping other families is even though today, May 4th, 2024, there are millions of people worldwide living with this disease, but today it stands as one of the most misunderstood diseases out there. So what I am going to talk to you about today, I was trying to figure out a way to really help everybody be able to relate to what it might be like to live with dementia. So let me ask you, have any of you ever stopped to think what it might be like to live with a brain disease like Alzheimer's disease that causes dementia? So what I've done is I have taken one of our all-time favorite childhood stories, Alice in Wonderland, and I am going to draw for you parallels between what it's really like to live with dementia with Alice's whimsical journey through Wonderland. Alice was sitting under a tree, listening to her caregiver read her a story, but she did not recognize the story at all. So she was growing restless and bored and feeling sleepy. So she started looking around, and out of the corner of her eye, she thought she saw what looked like a big giant rabbit, white rabbit, dressed in a suit, hurrying by. Alice ended up following the rabbit for a long time, right down a rabbit hole. Because she was so lost and so afraid and so scared, she really felt that her only chance of finding her way back to anything familiar would be to find the rabbit. So off she went. Just like in her dementia, Sometimes her memories would seem to float, just like those smoky words, only to vanish into thin air as she tried to grasp them. So, this is the part of the story, in the real Alice in Wonderland story, where Alice suddenly wakes up from her dream and is relieved to be back to where she started, sitting under a tree, listening to her sister read her a story, and listening to that story and sipping a warm cup of tea. Now, the big difference between the original Alice in Wonderland story and my out-of-the-box version of the Alice in Wonderland story, where Alice is an adult, but like many people who do live with Alzheimer's disease, believe that they are a younger version of themselves. The biggest difference here is in the real story, Alice did wake up from her dream. In my story, the Alice with the dementia, Alice will never be able to wake up from her dream, because this has become her real world. And it will be her real world every single day of her life, and there is no waking up from it. Even though living with Alzheimer's disease can be very challenging for not only the person that lives with it, but for everybody who's involved, it can still tender a wonderful life with purpose and joy and happiness and meaning. And this is really the message that I'm here to tell everybody today. I've been doing this for 30 years, plus I've had 8 of my own family members with dementia. And it is very possible for people to live wonderful lives in spite of this disease. I have personally seen that magic happen. It is very doable. But the one thing to keep in mind is people living with dementia can no longer join our world. So we have to learn how to adapt to their reality. Their reality is very different than ours. So if we can open our hearts to that concept and understand through the true examples, the very true examples that I've illustrated for you today of what it really does look like and feel like to live with a cognitive impairment, then it really is in the best interest of everybody. The person who lives with it really does have the means to be able to live a wonderful, fulfilling life. And the people who are involved, family members and caregivers, will have a much easier time of it too. So thank you so much for being here today and for listening to my story.